Okay, so the infinite version of the Dilworth's lemma. So the idea is, let us assume that every anti-chain is finite. We'll assume that every anti-chain is finite and show that there will be a infinite chain. Is that okay? We need to show that either there's an infinite chain or an infinite anti-chain. So we'll assume that every anti-chain is finite and show that there's an infinite chain. Construct an infinite chain. Okay. In fact, we are going to construct a countable chain, which is sufficient. Okay. So let us see. So suppose x with less than or equal to is an infinite poset such that every anti-chain in X is finite. Okay. Now we know by the previous lemma. What do we know by the previous lemma? Yeah, there will be some maximal anti-chain. Okay. Now by the previous lemma, X has a maximal anti-chain, say let us call that as script A. Okay, this has some maximal anti-chain, let's call it as script A. So this A, it has to be finite, right? Because we have assumed that every anti-chain is finite, therefore this has to be finite. Okay, which will mean that, okay, X difference A is infinite, right? This means that X difference A has to be infinite. This is as A is finite. Okay, X is infinite, A is finite, so X difference A has to be infinite, right? So what we do is we look at these two sets. Okay, these are kind of the sets below A and above A. In fact, I will put out these notations on top. I should have given you these notations before I started, but let's do it here. So suppose T is a subset of S. I'm going to use this standard notation. If T is some subset of X, okay, if T is a subset of X, I will define these two sets. Let's see what it is later. Okay, so we will define and say A is some element in X, or I want, yeah, A is some element in X. I am going to define S A T to be the set of all points in T that are less than A. Okay, I think that's, yeah. So the set of all points in T, set X is less than A, and I will define BAT to be the set of all points in T that are greater than X. Okay, so what is fixed here? I am making some mess. Yeah, that's fine. Greater than A. Okay, so is that okay? So we have some, let me draw out what we have here. So we have an infinite poset. Of course, I can't draw infinitely many points, but say the lattice diagram is something like this. Your lattice diagram is going to look like something like this. Okay, that's what your lattice diagram is going to look like, infinite lattice diagram. Okay, and you have a anti-chain. Let us say something like, let me just pick a red or a green pen. I think I have a green pen. So you have this anti-chain here. A, right? This green is your A. That's your lattice diagram, okay? So anti-chain will, no two elements are related, so they are not on the same this thing, okay? So that's the intuition. So we know that this A is finite, okay? We know that A is finite. So what does it mean that A is finite? It means that you look at, see, by the way, you can have branches out further also, right? These things can branch out. This is an infinite set, so these kind of branching is what you can expect on top, right? That's the way the poset is going to look, okay? So since A is finite, you look at the set of yeah, just a second. Anti-chain. There is this one, just a second now. Yeah, so what we know for sure, okay, what we know for sure is that given any point of x, right, it has to be comparable with one of the anti-chain, one of the elements of the anti-chain. Why? It has to be comparable with one of the elements of the anti-chain. Why? What is A? A maximal anti-chain, right? A is a maximal anti-chain. So given any point in x, it should be comparable with at least one of the elements of the anti-chain. Okay, it has to be comparable with one of them, and these are finite, right? So the pigeonhole principle, the infinite version of the pigeonhole principle, you'll have to see exactly how to utilize it, but the infinite version of the pigeonhole principle will tell us that there will be one element which is comparable with infinitely many elements of x. Make sense? There has to be one element, because if all of them were comparable with just finitely many, then x would be finite, right? If not, since x is infinite, there has to be at least one element here, because all elements of x should be comparable with one of these. Okay, on the diagram you can make out here, this is comparable with everything on this thing, and all the branches on top and possibly branches below and things like that. Okay, so that's what you have. So why is that? Because A is taken to be a maximal antichain. Have I said that? Yeah. So A is a maximal antichain. So given any element of x, it has to be comparable with some element of A. Okay. So that element which is comparable with infinitely many, we will call as x naught. Okay. So that's going to be the first element of the sequence. Let's have a look at it. Okay. The not sequence, the chain. We are trying to construct a chain. Okay. So we start with this is going to be your first element. So as as A is a maximal anti-chain, for every x in X, okay, there should be some, or for every A in X, there should be some X in A. This is bad notation, in fact. Let me let me go with, for every x in X difference A, this is an infinite set, right? So for every x in X difference A, there should be some A in A such that X and A are comparable. That means either X is less than or equal to A, or A is less than or equal to X. In fact, strict inequality, since we are looking at X difference A. Okay. Okay. Now, as A is finite, right? You can kind of have a mapping, but you have to be a little careful while making your function here, because if it is comparable with 2, you will have to choose one. That also can be done, but you should know that. Okay, so you can have a function from X difference A to A, taking this to the element in A with which it is comparable. In fact, it can only be comparable with one element. Can you have a crossover on top? Yeah, that's possible. This crossover on top is possible. So then that would be this thing. So that is not true. Okay. So as A is finite, so if it is comparable with 2, you have to choose one in that function. That's the only catch. So then you know that the pullback, because the domain is infinite, codomain is finite, there should be one pullback which is infinite. That's exactly what we are saying here. So since A is finite, there exists some x naught in A that is comparable with infinitely many elements in X difference A. Okay, so this is your x naught. So if you look at this branching out of this, if you look at this is this, let's call it as a, say, like a branch. Okay, so it goes up, it will branch out, and possibly goes down also, it will branch out. Okay, so what we are going to look at, this is my x naught. Okay, so what I am saying is, essentially one of these should be infinite, because X difference A is infinite. That's geometrically what is taking place. Now, what I am going to do is look on top of x naught and look below x naught. Okay, either the part on top of x naught is going to be infinite, or the part below it is going to be infinite. Right? Makes sense? Either the part over it is going to be infinite, or the part y, because there are infinitely many points on this branch. Right? If there are infinitely many points in this branch, either they have to be infinitely many points above it, or infinitely many points below it. Okay? So there is some So therefore, either this set, that is S x naught x, right? These are the set of all points which are related with, which are greater than x naught. Right? This is a set of all points in x which are greater than x naught. Okay, so this will be on top, this portion. Right? Is that okay? This will be your S x naught x, and whatever is below it will be B x naught x. So therefore either this or this, because the set of all points which are related with x naught in x difference A is going to be the union of these two. Right? If it's related with x naught, it's either less than x naught or greater than x naught, right? So I hope that's okay. It's going to be the union of these two. Okay, so either this or B x naught x is infinite. Maybe both also. This is not a exclusive OR, this is a inclusive OR, either both or. The one which is infinite I am going to take. Okay, the one which is infinite I am going to take to be x1. Okay, let the, I am not really worried about which one it is, infinite one among B x1, or I can call it as x naught, right, since I am starting with this. So x naught. Okay, so now what do I have? So say this is infinite, so this is going to be now x naught. Okay, now what do I have? I have got an infinite poset, right? This one doesn't contain x naught in it. These sets don't contain x naught in it, right? Strictly greater than or strictly less than. So I made a mistake, right? This is not this thing, this is B x naught x, greater than x naught. Okay, so the infinite one among them I am calling as x naught. Say in this case, let's look at this. Okay, because I can't draw below it, so let's take that. And again now I have got a poset, right? It's a subset of the previous poset, so I've got a poset here which is infinite, right? So this is going to have a maximal antichain, right? So this will have a maximal antichain. Let us call that maximal antichain as let's see, I think, yeah. So therefore, so this poset is basically the poset with the induced relation from the initial set x, right? Use the same relation on this. Okay, so your x naught is an infinite poset, and hence has a maximal antichain let us call that maximal antichain as A naught. Okay, so this has a, and of course x naught does not belong to, right, I should mention that x naught cannot be in capital X naught, right, but x naught is related to every element in capital X naught, right, it is always going to be related to one of these. So I can follow the exact same process, right. Yeah. So you can see at this branching on top there will be this antichain, okay, there will be this antichain, this will be my A naught, right, and I can have the exact same process on this what I had done earlier, right. So what will I be able to get? I will be able to get, following the same process, we can get, find x1 in x0 or x1 in a1, a0, okay, x1 in a0 that is related with, that is comparable with infinitely many elements in x0. Okay, so I can find some say x1 here, right? That's the x1. So you look above it and below it, one of them has to be infinite, and you pick out that one to be x2. Okay, and you can keep doing that, and you can keep getting your x0, x1, x2. Now, how I have chosen this x1, x2, x3, x4? I have chosen it in such a way. See, x0, x1 comes from where? It comes from a set which are all related to x0, right? All elements of the set above this are related to x0, comparable with x0. Okay. Similarly, I will choose x2 from this branch, so it's related to x1. I will choose x3 such that it's related, and it's not only related to x1, it's also related to x0, because it's a subset of x0, right? As I keep going higher, x1 will now be a subset of x0, and so on. So the points which we choose next are going to be related to the points earlier. So what have we got? Right? We can find x0 such that is similarly continuing in this manner. We can find a set, say x0, x1, x2, and so on, such that, right, so if you give me any 2 points, the one they are going to be related, because that's how you are choosing it. Okay, x1 is related, you are following the same process. I mean, x2 will be related with x1 and x0, and x3 will be related to x2 because they are going on the same branch. Okay, so that's the basic idea, such that xi and xj are comparable. And if this happens, what does this mean? That this set is going to be a, what happened? Yeah, so what does it mean? It means that this set is going to be a chain. Okay, so this set will be a chain. Let's call this as C. Therefore, C is a chain. C is, and it is infinite. Why is it infinite? Because this x1 cannot be x0, because x0, a1 is in a0, right, which is an element of x0, but x0 is not in x0, so x1 cannot be the same as x0. So these are all distinct. So therefore, C is an infinite chain. Okay, so this is the proof of the Dilworth's lemma. There is another very interesting question which you can ask in posets. As you've seen, I have used a lot of the infinite pigeonhole principle along the way. Okay, there's another interesting question that you can ask. If you look at the lattice diagrams of your posets, You all know how to draw these lattice diagrams, right? Put down the points and you need to draw what is related. At least in the finite cases, it can always be done nicely. Okay. In the infinite cases, I don't. The branching is a little harder. You can't always. I mean, we can only draw some intuition we can get of countably many, but beyond that, even countably many is hard. Okay. But see, I mean, you think of rationals also. You really can't even put it down in a nice string one after the other. It's countably many, but you can't. It's a totally ordered set. You still, it's difficult to think of this thing. Anyway, but for the finite case, at least, a nice question which you can ask is, can I partition out, so if I have a poset of length L, if I have a poset of length L, let us draw one. So to give examples, I would like to stick with the power set of A. It's a nice example. Okay. So let's look at the power set of A. Power set of say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have looked at this before. With containment, this is a poset, right? This is a nice finite poset. In fact, it is actually a very nice finite poset because anyway, let's not. So let's draw this poset out. So you have the empty set, then above it you will have the set of singleton sets. Okay. Then you will have a set with two elements, 1, 2, 1, 3. I think there is no enough of space. 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4, and then 3, 4. I think that's it, right? So then I have 1, 2, 3. Just help me out here. 1. These will be 4 elements. So that's going to be 1. You leave out 4. 1, 2, 3. Then you leave out 3. That is 1, 2, 4. Then you leave out 2. That's 1, 3, 4. And then you leave out, what is it? 1, 2, 3. I left out 1, 3, 4. Okay, and finally you have the 4 element subset. Okay, in fact I can even knock these out just for the sake, but it's not a way. Okay, so your lattice diagram is going to look like something like this. Right, this is what your lattice diagram is going to look like. Okay, I'm not drawing everything. The branches from down are going to be, you'll have 3 edges from down which go up. You're going to have 3. This is 4. Okay, so there are going to be 3 up and 2 on top of that because okay, 1, 2. Then here also the number of ways of extending is just what the left out is, right? That's 2. So that's the 1, 3 would go 1, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3 and so on, and these all go up here. So that's our diagram. Okay, so the question is, what's the width of this? What is the length of this? Length is quite easy to see. Length will be 5, right? The biggest chain. You start with the empty set because that should be in every chain, and then you go to a 1 element set, and then you go to a 2 element set, a 3 element set, and a 4 element set. This is exactly 5. What is the width? Yeah, it seems to be this, right? That essentially gives the sense of a width. That's what I was telling you. It gives the sense of a width. Okay, so the question which another interesting question is like this: can I partition or what are the least number of chains that I can partition out my poset into? the least number of chains that I can partition out my poset into? That's a interesting question. Okay, so obviously we cannot partition out a poset with chains less than 6, right? Why? Yeah, because of the pigeonhole principle. What will happen is, if you are partitioning out into anything less than 6, two of the chains will have one chain will have the 2 elements of the anti-chain, which is not possible, right? Because 2 elements of the anti-chain cannot be in the same chain. Okay, so at least 6 will be required. Question is it actually achievable? Right? In this case, we can see that it is achievable. How do we do that? It's quite easy. You can. It would be nice if I had 6 colors. We'll do with this. So you can see this is one chain. Okay, I'm looking at a partition. So let's no intersections. So the other one can be this, right? And then you can have this. This, right? Then you can have this, and then you can have singletons this and this. So how many we got? 1, 2. Yeah. So where is it? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then singletons 5 and 6. Okay. So this one you can see that you can partition. The question is whether is it okay? Makes sense, right? Okay. So we can partition this out into 6 chains. Okay. Each chain will have one element of the anti-chain. Okay. So the question is, can I partition any poset of width W, okay, into into W chains? Okay, is it actually achievable? That W, is it the yeah, can I actually achieve that partition? There's also another question. Okay, you look at the length of the longest chain. Okay, that is going to be 5. Now, any anti-chain cannot have 2 elements of the chain in it. An anti-chain cannot. So the minimum number of chains, the minimum number of anti-chains required to partition should be greater than 5, greater than or equal to 5. If I want to partition out my poset into anti-chains, at least I require 5, right? Because 2 elements of the chain, of the longest chain, cannot fall in the same anti-chain, right? It would not be an anti-chain. Okay, so I at least require 5. Can I achieve that? In this case, you can, right? You can kind of think of these sets. These are all anti-chains. Everything on the same level is going to be, because 2 subsets containing the same number of elements in it can never be contained in each other, right? So these kind of sets are in this, it is true. Does this happen in general in any poset? Okay, and this is true. Okay, this is a true statement. The second question is easily solved. It is called as the Minsky's theorem. It's a very easy proof to that. So let's see how we can prove that. In fact, we have done similar ideas before. I think 1 or 2 lectures earlier. And the previous question, that is, can I partition out, if the width is W, can I partition out the poset into W chains? Okay, so that is also true, and this is called as the Dilworth's theorem. Okay, we had proved Dilworth's lemma. This is called as the Dilworth's theorem. Okay, so let's see how to prove these two statements. Minsky's theorem is pretty simple. It is a straightforward proof, in fact. Okay, this is called as that is, let x with less than or equal to be a finite poset. So we are back to finite here. Okay, won't be getting to infinite again. I've done what I want to do in infinite. Be a finite poset. Okay, with length L. Okay, a finite poset with length L. Okay, then X can be partitioned into L antichains. Okay, which is also the minimum requirement. This L is definitely the minimum requirement, right? Why it's the minimum requirement? Why is it the minimum requirement? Why is L the minimum requirement? Because given any two anti-chains or given an anti-chain, you cannot have two elements of a chain in it, right? Given an anti-chain, you cannot have two elements of a chain in it, because anti-chain no elements are related. Any element of a chain is related, so any two elements of a chain are related, so or are comparable. That's the term I should use. So definitely you require at least L anti-chains. Make sense? Okay, so let's put that away. This part is proved. Okay, this is proved. Why? By the pigeonhole principle, we know that this is true. Okay, because okay. Now let's prove the other part. So the other part follows very beautifully, in fact, just like what we had done earlier. Any ideas how to get this partition? Yeah, so it's very simple. You simply define the function f from x to, I will use this notation L, which is essentially 1, 2 up to, I will, okay. And what will I take it to? Can you tell me? We have done this same, we have taken the same function before. Yeah? The length of the longest chain starting with x. Okay? Look at all the chains that start with x. Okay? It's finite. This is all possible. Okay? So look at all the chains starting with x and take the length of the longest one. So this is the length of the that starts with x. Okay, this is well defined because no chain starting with x can be of length greater than L, because the length of the poset is L. That means the length of the longest chain is L. So this is well defined. Okay, and what do we do is look at the pullback of this function. Right? Look at the pullback of this function. Consider P equals F inverse of 1, F inverse of 2, F inverse of L. Okay, these are L subsets. These are L subsets of X. Okay, and we know that the union of all of this has to be X. Right? The union of all of these have to be X. So if I can show that these are anti-chains, I am almost done. Okay, I'll tell you why I am saying almost. Why are these anti-chains? We have done this argument before. Okay, what happens if two elements in this set are related, are comparable? Yeah. So say X and Y is in F inverse of I. What does it mean? That the longest chain starting with X and Y are both I. Okay. What happens if X and Y are comparable? Say in particular, or without loss of generality, suppose we assume that X is less than or equal to Y. What will that mean? X is less than or equal to Y. Now you continue with the chain starting with Y. Right? There is a chain starting with Y of length I. What does that mean? That you have a chain starting with X of length I plus 1. That's a contradiction, right? You can't have, because this is the length of the longest chain starting with X. Okay, so that's not possible, hence X and Y cannot be related. Okay, so therefore these are all anti-chains. We have done this argument. These are all anti-chains. There's only one question. To say that this is a partition, it would be nice to actually you should say that these are all non-empty subsets. Why are these all non-empty subsets? See, for sure, the union of all of this is X, right? The union of all of this is definitely X. If any of them are empty, that means you're going to have a partition for X with less than L elements, less than L anti-chains, which earlier at the start we said is not possible. Why? If any of them are empty, you will have a partition for X with less than L anti-chains, which we said is not possible. Why? Because if there are less than L anti-chains, two elements of the longest chain are going to be in one of them by the pigeonhole principle. Right? Two elements of the longest chain will be in the same, but it's not possible, right? Two elements of a chain cannot be in the same anti-chain. So hence these have to be non-empty. Okay, actually, so these all have to be non-empty. So I have proved that they are all non-empty and they are all anti-chains. So I have got a partition of L anti-chains. Okay, but actually you can give a nice hard proof. You can actually catch hold of one element in each of these. There is a way of actually catching hold of one element. I have not done that. It's not required, but just think about it. Take the longest chain. Okay, so if you take the longest chain, the starting element will be here. The second element cannot possibly be, the second element you have a chain of length L minus 1 starting with it, right? Correct. It is not possible that you also have a chain of length L starting with it. Why? Because for the second element, if you have a chain of length L starting with it, yeah, then you take the first one, go to the second one, and then go to that chain of length L. So then the first one will have a chain of length L starting, L plus 1 starting with it. Doesn't make sense, right? So the second one, so the length of the longest chain starting with the second one should be L minus 1. So the second element will be in F inverse of L minus 1. Similarly, you go to the third element, right? Third element, you have one chain of length L minus 3 starting with it. The same chain, right? Start at that point. You have a chain of length L minus 3 starting with it. Okay. Suppose there is a chain of length bigger than L minus 3 starting with it, then you are going to have a chain of length bigger than L starting with the first one. That's not possible. So in the same way, so the first element will be here of the longest chain, the first element will be here, second element will be here, and so on, last element will be here. That's a hard proof to actually show that these are non-empty, which is not required. But just to show you that you can actually prove the existence quite easily, the fact that these are non-empty. So that proves Minsky's theorem. So the other question is the one which is left. Okay, what is the other question? And in fact, if you saw what was done in the previous example, this is exactly how I had constructed the anti-chain, right? The empty set, what is the longest chain that starts with the empty set? 5, right? What is the longest chain that starts with a singleton? 4, right? What is the longest chain that starts with a 2-element subset? Yeah. So the 2-element subset, then one 3-element subset, then one this thing. So 3, and a 3-element subset 2, and a 4-element subset 1. Okay, so this is exactly what I had done. Take all the elements of the same. That's the way it is. Okay, so the next one is called as the Dilworth's theorem. That is, what is the statement of the Dilworth's theorem? The full proofs of this I will be throwing on the notes and sending you all. They are not yet on the notes. I will have to update. Even if they are, don't refer to them. There are errors in it. So what does the Dilworth's theorem tell us? It states that if you have a finite partially ordered set, did I miss out? Yeah. If you have a finite partially ordered set of width W, then you can partition it out into W chains. Okay, is that okay? If you have a finite partially ordered set of width W, then you can partition it out into W chains. Okay, at least the requirement of at least W chains is understood by everyone, I suppose. Okay, the existence is what we actually need to show. Okay, in fact, even if I manage to show in some method of a proof, manage to show that I can find a partition with less than or equal to W chains, I am still done, because the requirement of at least W chains is understood, right? So that would be greater than or equal to. If I just show less than or equal to, my proof is done. So let's see. So this is not as straightforward as the previous theorem. It's a little more interesting. So let x with less than or equal to be a poset, be a finite poset of width W. Okay, then x can be partitioned into W chains, which is again which is the minimum requirement. the fact that it's the minimum requirement is easy to say, because no two elements of an anti-chain can be in the same chain. So by the pigeonhole principle, this is quite clear. Okay, so the proof of this we will be doing by induction. Okay. Yeah, so let me say here, so since induction on not on the width of x but on the number of elements of x, okay, that's what we are going to do the induction on the number of elements in x. Okay, so since no two elements of a chain can be in the same anti-chain by the pigeonhole principle. Okay, make this argument, I will leave it out to you. By the pigeonhole principle, we require at least, it is not possible with anything less than this W. Okay, we require at least W chains in the partition. Okay, so the method goes like this, the proof goes like this. The first case is, the first part is very easy. Okay, it's easy to observe that when the cardinality of x, so it is easy to observe that when the cardinality of x is 1, right, that the proof follows, right? Why? If the cardinality is 1, what happens? What will be the width? Compulsorily 1, right? So I definitely can partition it around it, because a singleton set is both a chain and an anti-chain, right? A singleton set will be both a chain and an anti-chain, so we can partition it out into this thing. So when cardinality of x is 1, the proof follows very easily. There is nothing to show. What about when, yeah, so we make the assumption of this statement when the cardinality of x is less than n and irrespective of the width of x. Okay, irrespective of what's the width for x. So assume that any poset of with less than n elements and with some width, I am not fixing the width, okay, with some width W, okay, I am not fixing, this is not a fixed W, okay, and with some width W has, I don't know whether I require, means whether I can fix it, I am not sure. As we go along the proof, we will know whether it can be fixed or not, but let's not fix it just for convenience. So, with some width W has a or can be partitioned into W chains. So, if it has some width, it can be partitioned into chains of the same width. And the number of chains are the width. Okay. So, let us now take X with less than or equal to be a poset with n elements in it, and now I am fixing W. I know it is this thing. If you don't like me fixing and moving the same elements, you can put a prime here. It doesn't matter. Okay. So, such that this is n and has width W. Okay. We take X to be a poset with n elements and with W. I now need to show that this can be partitioned into W chains. Okay. So, if W is 1, the result is obvious. Can you tell me why? What does it mean to say that W is 1? What does it mean to say that W is 1? The size of the largest anti-chain is 1. What does that mean? Yeah? Any two elements are comparable, right? If the size of the largest chain is largest anti-chain is 1, that means if you give me two elements, they don't form an anti-chain, which means that they have to be comparable. Okay. In other words, what does that tell you? That X is totally ordered. Any two elements of X are comparable, so X is itself a chain. So I can get a partition of with one partition, that is X itself. Okay. So if W is 1, then any two elements of X are comparable, and hence X is itself a chain. That proves it, right? So I have got a partition with one chain, partition of one chain. Now the other case, hence we assume that, therefore assume that, I don't know whether I need to do this, let's anyway, W is strictly greater than 1. Okay. Now what I am going to do is, I am going to search for one minimal element, okay, not a minimum, or minimal. This can always be done. Okay, we can always get, in a finite poset, we can always get minimal element and a maximal element. How do we do that? It's quite simple. Go to a random element, ask, does it have an element less than it? If it has, go to that element. Again ask, does this have any element less than it? If it does, you go to that. At some stage, there is going to be an element which does not have any element less than it, because we only have, you are creating a chain, right? You are creating a chain in this manner. Go to an element, find an element less than it, find an element less than that, find an element less than that. So at most you can create a chain of length n, because you have n. So you can always find some, it's a very simple process. You can easily find a minimal element, okay, not a minimum element, a minimal element. That is, what is a minimal element? A minimal element is one such that no other element is less than it. Okay, it is not less than or equal. Yeah, it is not less than or equal to everything else. It's just that no other, if another element is related to it, it has to be bigger than it. If you take any other element, either it will be related to it and greater than it, or it will not be on that branch at all. It will not be related. That's quite simple to see. So we will take this minimal element m, okay, and okay, let me draw a picture here. This is quite an interesting proof. So we have some kind of a finite poset here. Of course, there are these interlinks which are nice to draw. Okay, generally we draw them as this thing, but that's fine. I don't know why I've drawn so many. Okay, so this is my, say this is my m. Okay, this is my m. I'm going to look at this branch. Okay, that is, I'm going to look at, not in fact this branch, everything that is above m. Okay, so it will go here and plus that. So if I look at that, look at only that set, that will have a maximal element, only this branch. Okay, let me call it as a branch. This branch, okay, that will have a maximal element. As you can see here, it has two. This one or that one. It doesn't matter. I want one. Okay, so this one has a maximal this thing. Okay, so I have a minimal and I also have maximal. There is one consideration here, that is, I don't want m to be, small m and big M to be the same. So I need to take care of that. How do I do that? Does it matter? I take this out, then I find an anti-chain out of this set. Yeah, it's not going to be a problem. Okay, so let small m be a minimal element in X, okay, and capital M be a maximal element of the set, which set? X in, how do I know that there is one? Yes, I'll do something x naught here, no two, I mean at least I want to see that, my basic idea is I want to see that so I can find a chain of two elements in it, that would be sufficient. If the width is greater than 1, there should be okay. Let me just refine this slightly, because I need to say that small m and capital M are different. There is a need for this. Okay, so slightly refine this. Since the width is greater than 1, right? Since the width is greater than 1, you will be able to find two elements which are related, right? Since the width is greater than 1, because the two, how do I make this argument? What will it mean to say that the width is, can anyone tell me why you can find two elements which are related? How? Of the? Okay. I have not got it. What would happen if two elements are, just a second. It is definitely true. I need to say that you have two elements which are related. How do I say that? If no two elements are singletons form that would be itself be a anti-chain. Yes, correct. See, yeah, that's what happens. I want to find, no, I want to find a, that's, I'm getting confused. If the no two elements are related, X itself would be an anti-chain, right? If so, if X itself is an anti-chain, the length is 1. That's not right. Okay, let's move forward. I'll come back. Yeah, tell me. It might not be right what I said. Yeah. That's what I am not too keen on doing. I'm not sure whether I would fall in trouble doing that. Anyway, let's continue and then we'll come back to that. Okay, so see, you take yeah, let's do it that way, and if I fall in trouble, we'll come back to it. Okay, so let's take this set. So M to be the maximal element of x in X such that M is less than or equal to X. Let's see if I fall in trouble, I'll come back. Okay, so that's up there. Okay, now we can consider the set X difference M comma M, M comma small m comma capital M. Okay, and this is going to be a poset with less than n elements in it. Okay, this is going to be a poset with less than m elements in it. So now the cardinality of X difference M comma M, even if small m is equal to capital M, still the number of elements in this is going to be less than n. Okay, so this has less than n elements in it. Okay, and the width of this will be at most w. Why? The width of this poset will be at most w. Why? Because if this has an anti-chain with more than w elements in it, the same anti-chain is also going to be an anti-chain for X. But X has only w. The width of X is w, right? So the biggest anti-chain of X is w. So hence that's not possible. So this has to have the width of this has to be less than w. Okay, the width of this has to be less than w. Width less than w. Okay, or less than or equal to w. With width less than or equal to w. Now, if the width is strictly less than w of this, if the width of this is strictly less than w, then this will have an anti-chain. Oh, sorry. If the width of this is strictly less than w, let's see what we can do. So there are two possible cases. Case 1, the width of X difference of I should write X difference small m comma capital M. Okay, if the width of X difference small m comma capital M, okay, is less than w, strictly less than w, then by the induction hypothesis I can split this up into chains of length whatever the width is here. Okay, let me call the width of this as can I give it a name? Let's say w0, just some notation. Okay, so if the width of this is w0, which is strictly less than w, by the induction hypothesis, X difference m comma m can be partitioned into w naught chains say, let us call this as the chains I am calling as maybe, if this is okay, C1, C2 up to CW naught, right? And this number, because W naught is strictly less than W, okay? Now I can get a partition for X. What is it? Of which one? Look at C1, C2, CW naught. This is a partition for X difference M comma N. But M and N are related, right? M is less than or equal to capital M, right? So therefore, if I put this here, it will be a partition of, is a partition of chains of X. And how many elements are here? How many elements are here? W naught plus 1, right? The number of elements here are W naught plus 1. The number of elements here, this W naught is strictly less than W. So W naught plus 1 will be at most W, right? So we are done, right? We need to find, in fact, for sure, if this is less than, it can possibly at most be W minus 1. That's what you can see, because this is a partition of chains, which means that this has to actually be greater than or equal to W. Not required to make that statement, because I have already said that it's this thing later. That's fine. Okay. So this proves it in this case. So we have to only check the other case. What is the other possible case? Here I have said that W naught is strictly less than W. What is the other possible case? Can it be greater than W? No. Why it cannot be greater than W? We have actually made that statement here, right? It cannot be, the width of this cannot be greater than W. So it can be at most equal to. What happens if the width of this is equal to W? So case 2, the width of X difference M comma M is W. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take an anti-chain of biggest length in this. Okay, now once you take an anti-chain of the biggest length, it will also be a maximal anti-chain. That is quite easy to see. Why? Because if you take any other element outside it, it should be related to one among these. Why not? Why? If it is not, then I can add it to the anti-chain and make a bigger anti-chain. That's not possible, right? Because this is the biggest anti-chain. Okay, so if I take an element outside, it should be related to one of these elements. Okay, so let A, which is A1, A2 up to AW, be an anti-chain of X difference M comma M okay, sorry, of length okay. So here is the interesting part of the argument. So this is what we are going to do next. Let me draw it first and then we will make the argument. This was the actual requirement of my M. So I want to see whether this directly gives me what I want. So something like this. Something of this sort. I mean, I don't know what else to draw. Maybe you are single. I don't know. Okay. This is my anti-chain. Okay. This is my anti-chain. A. None of these are related. No. No. Okay. So this is my anti-chain. The idea is like this. What I will be doing is look at all points below it. Okay. Look at all points below this and look at all points above it. Okay. So if I look at all points below it, what do you expect the width of that partially ordered set to be? Look at all the points below this. We will see how to define it later, but look at all the points below this. What do you expect the width of that partially ordered set to be? What do you expect it to be? Intuitively, what do you expect it to be? Then we will think of a yes? Any idea? What do you expect the width of? Look at all points below this. What do you expect the width to be? It's quite natural. You can include these points also. Everything below it, including these points. That I should have stated. What do you expect the width to be? Yeah? Can it be less? Can it be less? It actually has an anti-chain of length W, right? The same one. That's an anti-chain of length W. And it cannot be less than W. So it cannot be less than W. It cannot be greater than W. Why? Because it is a subset of X. And X has the biggest anti-chain is of size W. So neither can this have an anti-chain of size greater than W. Similarly, for the part above it, okay, the part above it is also going to be of width W. Okay. Now, what's the nice interesting thing that takes place here is like this. If I can show, okay, that M, small m, okay, there is a small catch here. The catch is you need to show that, see, the intersection of these two sets. What is the intersection of these two sets? At least intuitively looking at here, what is the intersection of these two sets? A, right, the anti-set. That's the only intersection. So this is the intersection. So if I can show that this set and this set have less elements than X, then I could use induction on these sets. Okay. The way I will show that these sets have less elements is by showing that, where is that? Small m, okay, that's easy to prove. Okay. So I will have to show that small m, okay, is in the lower part and capital M is in the upper part. Why is that true? It's quite easy to see. We know that small m should be related with one of these, but it cannot be above it, so it should be below it. Okay, and none of these are small m or capital M, so that will tell us that small m is below this. So I have got shown that this is non-empty. Similarly, I can show that this is non-empty, and for the sake of this thing, we keep it on the same branch. Make sense? So this is non-empty, this is non-empty. Once this is non-empty, and this element is not in A, which means that this cannot be the entire X. It doesn't have M in it, right? In fact, M is not there, so this cannot be the entire X. Capital M is not here, so this cannot be the entire X. So I can use induction on both these sets. Okay, let's look at what we can do. It's quite easy to follow it from here. So where was I at? Okay, so I want to define these kind of sets. That's my idea. I'm going to define these kind of sets. So I'm going to use the same type of notations which I have used in the previous theorem. Okay, so for I equals 1 to up to W, okay, I will let Si or Sai if you like, but I will take Si. Okay. Might as well just suffix it with the index. So I will take Si. You want Sai? We'll take Sai. Sai, just like the previous case, to be the set of all points in X, be the set of all X in X, which are less than Ai or equal to. Okay, I want to also include these points in them. Okay, and I will take Bai to be the set of all points X in X, such that Ai is less than or equal to X. Okay. Now I will take S, capital S, to be union of all Si, Sai, and take capital B to be union of all Bai. Okay, so I expect that this is going to be my S and that's going to be my that's what the natural this thing is. You look at what is this SEI. SEI is all points less than it, less than that. So this is your A1, A2, A3, less than it, and that is your BAI. Okay, there are some things to prove. For sure, the intersection of these two contain at least the antiset, for sure. Okay, the intersection will contain the antiset because AI is both in SEI and, right, AI is both in SEI and BAI. So at least it will contain the this thing. I want to say it cannot contain anything else. Okay, I want to say it cannot contain anything else. So let's see. So for any I, it is clear by the diagram, but we need to give a proof to it. Okay, for any I equals 1 to n, 1 to W, AI should belong to both, will belong to both S and B. Okay, I hope this is clear. Why? Because AI is in SEI and this is simply the union of all the SEIs. Okay, which would mean that A, script A, is contained in S intersection B. Okay, is that okay? This is an S intersection. Now, take an element from S intersection B, show that it has to be in AI. Okay, so let's take an element. So let some X belong to S intersection B. What's the meaning of this? X will be both in S and in B. What does it mean to say that S is in X is in S? It means that it should be in one of these, right? So there should be some I such that X is in SAI, and since it's in B, it should be in one of these, because this is the union, right? So it should be in one of these. So there exists some J, you can't use the same this thing, such that X is in BAJ. What is the meaning of this? X is in SAI means what? What is the meaning of X is in SAI? I need to show, just a second. Yeah? Yeah. X in SAI means what? AI is less than or equal to X. So that means that AI is less than or equal to X and X is less than or equal to AJ. Think back. What do I want to prove? That X is in A. Is that clear from here? Why? By transitivity, this tells me that AI should be less than or equal to AJ. When is that possible? When is that possible? By transitivity, this tells me that AI should be less than or equal to. When is this possible? What is A? An anti-chain. When I and J are equal, right? Because A is an anti-chain. So therefore, I should be equal to G. So let me write it here itself. This means that I equals J as capital A is an anti-chain. And if I equals J, what do we have here? We have AI is less than or equal to X and X is less than or equal to AI. And what does this tell me? Antisymmetry. That X should be equal to AI, right? I is equal to J. So therefore, AI is less than or equal to X, X is less than or equal to. So this tells me that X, which is in A. So I have taken any element in the intersection and proved that it's in A. So therefore, what I have is that A is contained in, this was already proved, the other side, sorry. So S intersection B is contained in A. So therefore, A is nothing but S intersection B. So A is in both S and B. And this is the elements of A are the only ones that cross over S and B. That's another thing which you have to understand. Okay, so okay, next thing to discuss is what is the width of S and what is the width of B. Okay, that follows easily, right? So both S and B have an anti-chain A of size, don't call anti-chain length because it doesn't resemble the length, right? They're not, anyway, of size W, okay? Both of them have an anti-chain of size W, okay? And they are subsets of X, so therefore they cannot have an anti-chain of size bigger than W, right? And S and B are both subsets of X, hence cannot have anti-chains of size greater than W. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that the width of S and B are both W. Okay, therefore the width, by the way, what is S union B? The full of X. Is that clear? Why S union B is the full of X? because you take any x in X, right? Since A is maximal, we argued that since it's a anti-chain of the biggest width, of the biggest size, it has to be maximal. So you take any this thing, it has to be related to one of them. If you take any x in X, it should be related to one element of A, say AI. Related to AI, either it will fall there or it will fall there. Simple as that. Okay. So therefore, anti-chain of size, therefore the widths of S and B are W. Next thing to do, the next thing to do is to show that S and B are non-empty. Okay, we will show that S and B are non-empty. Why is S and B non-empty? Yeah. Why is S and B non-empty? So we are going to show that M is in S, small m is in S, and capital M is in B. So let's see that. This will automatically this thing. So you need not worry about proving that they are not equal. That's fine. Okay. So this is the problem which I was thinking of. Anyway, so as capital A is a maximal anti-chain, okay, there will be some k, there will be some k equals 1 to up to W such that M is comparable to AK. Okay, but obviously, is that okay? M is comparable with AK. Okay, now I have not stated one more thing earlier, which I have to actually tell you. We'll see. So M is comparable, but M cannot be greater than AK because M is a minimal element. Okay, M is a minimal element. That's how we had taken it. We had taken it to be some minimal element in X. So M cannot be greater than AK. So this will mean that M has to be less than or equal to AK. Okay. And what does this mean? This means that M will have to be in S. It's in SK, right? Which is a subset of S. Okay. Now I also want to say that capital M, that's my M. Okay. So this is my K somewhere here. 2 is here. That's fine. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is say that capital M is in B. Okay. To say that capital M is in B, I need to say one small this thing. See, what was capital M taken to be? A maximal element in that what do you call it? In that branch, right? In this particular branch, it was a maximal element. I need to say that it's a maximal element of X. Why is it a maximal element of X? So what would happen if what would happen if X if M is less than or equal to X, what would happen in this case? Yeah, that form. Yeah. So what would happen if M is less than or equal to some X? If M is less than or equal to some X, we know that small m is less than or equal to capital M, right? Which means that small m is less than or equal to x. That means that x is on this branch, is on the branch of small m, right? But capital M is a maximal element of that branch, right? Of that same set, m is a maximal element. So this cannot take place unless x is equal to m. Okay, so it is true that m is a maximal element of x. Okay, I hope that's clear. So what do I need to show? That to say that m is a maximal element of x, what do I need to say? That there is nothing that is bigger than it. Okay, so I'm going over the proof again. If there is something that is bigger than it, it should fall inside that set. Which set? The set of all, I should write A here. Okay, the set of all x in x such that x is or m is less than or equal to x. Right? A will fall inside this set. But capital M is a maximal element of this set. So therefore that cannot take place unless A is equal to M. That proves it. Okay. So therefore M has to be a maximal element of capital X. Okay. So I will not write this proof, you can include it in your this thing later. So as capital A is a maximal anti-chain, you will have some t equal 1 to up to w such that capital M is comparable to AT, which would mean that again, as I said, since capital M is a maximal element of x, it would mean that AT is less than or equal to capital M, and therefore this will mean that M is in B. Okay, so that's what we have. So we have proved this. And again, capital M and small m are not in A. So therefore, what happens is, since M is in S but not in A, M cannot be in B. Small m is not in B and capital M will not be in S. Is that okay? Because if M was in S and B, then it has to be in capital A. But we know that that's not true, because that's the way we have chosen that A is a anti-chain in X difference small m capital M. So that works. Okay. So this is what we have. So now I can use the induction hypothesis on S and B. Let me do that fast. There are a few more arguments left. So by the induction hypothesis, S can, let me write both together. Okay, both S and B can be partitioned into, because what is the width of these sets S and B? The width is W. That's what we have argued. So therefore can be partitioned into W chains. Okay. Okay. Let us say that the chains of let me say that the chains of S are S1 prime up to SW prime. Okay. So let S1 prime, S2 prime up to SW prime be the partition of chains of S, and B1 prime up to BW prime be the partition of chains of B. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so this is what I am going to plan on doing. This is the idea which we are going to get to. Okay, so see here, everything you're looking at, everything below it. Okay, now it is not possible that yeah, so one thing for sure, that each AI will be in one of these. So let us, without loss of generality, assume that AI is in Si prime. It has to be, right? Because two AIs cannot be in the same Si prime, because these are chains and that's an anti-chain. So two of them cannot be in the same. So let's say that AI is in Si prime and AI is in prime. I want to say one thing. This is all. This will complete it. If I say that this is, you can see here, this is your S, right? So this is my AI. If I say that AI is a maximum element of AI, is the biggest element in Si prime, right? And if I say that AI is the minimum element in Bi prime, then I can go from here to AI and then up there. That will give me a chain of X. See, that's the way you take it. So the chain of X will then be S1 prime union B1 prime, S2 prime union B2 prime, and so on. Okay, so how do I say that this is the maximum element of Si prime? So what will happen, this is comparable with every element here. What will happen if this is less than some element here? Suppose this is less than some element here, okay? We know that every element here is less than some element of A. So it will be less than some J. So you have AI less than some S, right? But S is anyway less than some AJ. That will tell you that S has to be equal to AI. Same argument. AI is less than or equal to AJ, right? Which means that I should be equal to J. So therefore, S should be equal to AI. So the only time that can take place is when S is equal to AJ. Okay. Similarly, here if we look at, this has to be a minimum element. What happens if there is some B which is in this? If there is some B such that this is small, less than or equal to, what happens if this is bigger than some B? Okay, and since B is in B, there should be some AJ such that AJ is less than or equal to B. Again, by transitivity, we have AJ is less than or equal to AI, and hence I should be equal to J. That's it. With this, what happens is, this is the minimum element here, okay, sorry, maximum element here and minimum element here. So therefore, the union will give you your partitions of X. Okay, you can write out that part. It will be on your notes.